Hello and welcome to part 3. This part begins with the attaching of the lower wing section. There's a total of 3, 2 uppers and 1 lower wing half. And I do this because a difficult part with modeling airplanes is that the wing to wing root join. And you can see here as I dry fit it, to get a seamless join between them where there's no gaps or anything is it's not easy, and a great way to do it is by attaching the lower section first. Then you remove the locating pins on the upper wings and just slide it into place, and if you've cleaned up the parts properly, it should go on and there should be no gaps. And on a plane like this by Hasegawa, which is really an excellent fitting model, it's a really good technique to eliminate those gaps and to have a nice seamless finish. I'm using Tamiya extra thin cement, and it's primarily what I use, other than CA glues and other types of glues, but for modeling purposes it's the go-to for me. I've been using it for years, and it's excellent, and almost no cleanup. Little residue as well. Here I'm just assembling the horizontal stabilizers, holding them in place for a few seconds, just allow the glue to set up, and then check the alignment to make sure that they are 90 degrees with the vertical stabilizer. Now this is a great product. This is the Eduard Express masks, and they are basically a kabuki tape mask that is laser cut, and they are designed to fit particular models, and you just peel them off the backing and apply them to the glass panel on the canopy. It's saves time, I swear by it. The purist might say, oh, well, it's not true model making, but I think that this is a great way to save time, and they just fit on beautifully. In most cases, I don't think I've ever had any that didn't line up perfectly within the canopy framing. And as you can see, you just cut it and peel it off and carefully attach it, and you go on to the next one. It's as easy as that. There are literally hundreds and hundreds for different scales, different genres of modeling, whether it be science fiction or tanks or airplanes, what have you. I think I must have at least 100 of these for all the aircraft kits that I have. And they just really are a great product and have saved an enormous amount of time and allowed actually the completion of a lot of models due to these. So for $5, can't go wrong. Before in preparation of the canopy, I almost exclusively in all models where it involves clear parts, I dip my canopies in future floor polish, and you can find it literally anywhere, Walmart or what have you. And it's a great product to protect the canopy. Makes the glass free from imperfections or scratches, and makes it crystal clear. And here I'm just almost finished attaching all the pieces, and you can see it's just a matter of lining it up carefully pressing it down with your finger. Don't forget to remove your fingerprints from the back of the canopy. So here I'm just gluing on the radio to the back of the headrest there. I'm also going to be putting on the antenna framing, which goes right above the radio. But if you notice, there's seat belts on that seat, and I originally shot my placement of the seat belts and attaching and all that stuff, but it just didn't, the video didn't render well, and I decided against adding it. So if you're interested, these are the Imperial Japanese Navy seat belts by Eduard. I'll put the actual item number in the description below. Okay, so this is going to be the first step in the weathering process, and I'm going to try and replicate the effect that the prop wash had on removing paint off a lot of late war Japanese aircraft. Late in the war, a lot of problems with production and paint availability and things of that nature led to a lot of aircraft not being painted in primer. And the crushed coral runways would literally remove lots of paint off the sides of the aircraft from the prop wash. And so to replicate this, I'm applying Valejo liquid mask, and that is 70.523 in patches, and then overspraying it with the upper and lower colors. Now I'm applying at this stage the lower camouflage color, which is Tamiya XF19 Sky Gray. Now it's not the gray that you would normally use for Japanese aircraft. I actually ran out, and so I just used this substituted, and it's not you know, a terribly improper thing to do, I guess, but this particular part right now, I highlighted the gray with a little bit of X2 gloss white to lighten the colors and further accentuate the weathering process and the panels. I will go over all of this with weathering powders and pin washes and washes of different kinds in order to really make the aircraft come to life. But this is just the beginning. I like to have a gloss on there just because, or at least a semi-gloss. It protects the paint and provides a good basis for weathering. So once the lower color is dry, I usually wait about 48 hours for that. But after 48 hours, I decided to mask off the demarcation line between the lower and upper camouflage colors. And for this step, I'm using a great product by Tamiya. It's their 3mm masking tape for curves. And it's a great product to use on curves. There's only a slight curve from the wing root to around the cowling. And as you can see, it's you just put it on, and I just use the tweezers to carefully align it where I want it to go. And I usually trim things down so it makes it easy to apply. The longer the tape, the more likely, and for some reason it just loves to get stuck in places you don't want it to get stuck. So I just cut it close to where it's got to be. And just burnish it down with the edge of the tweezers and your finger just to make sure that you have a really solid seam there where no paint can bleed underneath. Now as I do the second side, I just wanted to mention that normally in the wheel wells you'll have a special kind of primer or a special kind of paint that the Japanese use called, I believe it's called as aotake or aotake, and it was a metallic blue-green color. This particular aircraft didn't call for that. So they probably just either ran out of that at this stage of the war or just painted over it, whatever it may be. If you're out there and normally used to seeing that color on the wheel wells, well, I didn't call for it. And you can see I've used the Tamiya tape to mask off the rear part of the fuselage, and 18mm Tamiya masking tape to mask the lower sections of the horizontal stabilizers. Overspray seems to find itself everywhere, so I always do as much masking as possible to make sure that you don't have to do touch-ups at a later date. Okay, so I'm ready to spray the upper camouflage color. I'm using Gunze Sangyo Aqueous Hobby Color H59 IJN Green. And it's a semi-gloss and thinned with about 40% Tamiya lacquer thinner with about, I think, 19 psi on the compressor, or very close to that anyways. And yeah, it's great paint. Love it. Used it for years. I think I've had this bottle for probably 20. I don't do a lot of Japanese aircraft, but yeah, I just find it a very vibrant green, and it seems to be very close to the reproduction photos I've seen of Japanese aircraft. I like it much better than the Tamiya brand. And the semi-gloss aspect of it just creates a good, solid, strong barrier, and good for handling too. Doesn't show fingerprints. So here I've added some light green to my IJN Green mix, and I'm doing this to create a highlight color. It's probably about 30% of this color added to the IJN Green, and I do add a good 50% lacquer thinner on top of that just to make it really thin. This allows you to gradually build up that color on the side. That's why it probably doesn't show very effectively on video here, but you get very gradual buildup, and you can control the paint much easier with this technique. Now this is where I'm removing the Valejo liquid mask that I put on previously. I've already, as you can see on the wing there, I've already taken some of it off, and I'm just basically rolling up some green painter's masking tape and pulling off the liquid mask that's been applied on the airframe. The Valejo mask is excellent. I've used a few different kinds, the microscale stuff and the Humbrol stuff, and I gotta say the Valejo by far is the best. It's got good adhesion, yet it is easy to remove. And so here's a better shot of it. You can, you just got to repeatedly go over and over again, and you have to roll up new tape too, just to get it super sticky. So here I'm just spraying on the anti-glare panel. That is Tamiya X18 semi-gloss black. Love that color. I did highlight it with Gunze H333 Extra Dark Sea Gray, and just a very thin mixture over top the semi-gloss black, and that just sort of highlights it and makes it not so dark, and as I said before, gives it a bit of scale effect. The yellow for the leading edge and the upper part of the fin here, or the tail, I used Tamiya XF3 flat yellow with a few drops of X7 gloss red, and again heavily thin, but numerous coats, probably about 5 or 6, and it covered fairly nicely. Now it's probably a little too dark for the Japanese yellow that is seen on aircraft, but you know, what can you do? It's just part of modeling. Here I'm just removing the mask and showing what's underneath. There's quite a bit of it. But from here on in, I'll leave you to watch the rest of this. And thank you very much for tuning in. And stay tuned for part 4 of my Raiden build here. And again, thanks for watching.